Hey guys, welcome. This video is being made for our third season of our Vermillion League Pokemon draft. Right now we're on ADV 200, the third generation series. I'm making this video as a pre-season video to help people out gather the resources and information they need before they actually pick their Pokemon. If you guys look in the resources tab of our Discord, you'll see two different links I posted. In the resources tab, you'll see one called the RSE Pokemon Rankings, and one called the ADV 200 Resources to Share. I'm just going to briefly go over each one so you guys get a basic understanding of what they're going to be covering. And the RSE Pokemon Rankings, this one's pretty simple to understand. I'm going to zoom out a little bit more so people can see. Looking on here, you guys can see how we ranked every single Pokemon for how much they're going to be costing in the league. If this is your first time with us for a draft, typically, and what's going to happen for this one, we have a budget of 100 points, and you're also supposed to draft 8 Pokemon. No more, no less. You must have enough money to get at least 8. So, you see all the Pokemon and how many points they're worth. You want to balance them and try to get as many as you can, essentially as close as you can to 100 to get the most bang for your buck. So you can see all of them over here. Highlight in the 20, Skarmory. In the 18s, we have Starmie, everything going down that line. Gyarados in the 17 alongside his brethren. Breloom leading the 16 pack, Slacking leading the 15 pack, going all the way down until we get to the 3s. You may see that it goes from 20 all the way to 3, but there's no 1s. Why is that? They're over here. There's way too many of them. I didn't want to put them just on the same chart as this, just because it'd be really hard to really format all of that. So instead, if you just scroll all the way down here, you can see every single 1-pointer that you may need for your heart's content later in this gen. It goes all the way down to line 71. And so, yeah, that's the basic overview of our Pokemon rankings for you guys to look at. You may be wondering, why is each Pokemon ranked the way it is? How should I get my Pokemon? That's when we come to the next page I actually shared with everyone here. The ADV 200 tab that I shared for everyone, we'll go back to introduction, is a giant overview for all the different resources me and the other members who are building the league use to determine everything. And there's also a bunch of resources as well to help people out who are also new to drafts, because we have a lot of new drafters this season, about 5 of them. So in here, this is just an introduction telling you what the Vermillion League's about. Each tab has different links going to different subject matters. The first tab is about draft guides. It's here to serve as a way to help you out, learn about what a draft is in the first place. Each one shows a good example. You can see there's the beginner guides to draft leagues right here, made by Smogon University. If you played a draft before, you really don't need to look at this because you have an idea of what drafts already are. If you have never played a draft before, open it up. You can see here, it's a great article. It tells you why you should play draft leagues, what type of formats there are, what are the typical rule sets, what are the typical rules when it comes down to drafting, the seasons, battles. It'll show some rosters. It'll show you how team building looks at the end of the process. It's a nice basic introductory statement for draft leagues. From there, we have the second link in here. There's the Volume 2 guide, which I think is a better expansion on it. What it does, instead of telling you what a draft is and how it essentially works, it tells you a lot about the strategies to do to actually be good at drafting. This isn't about strategies for your team, as in when you're actually battling, but rather for how to get the most bang for your buck on which Pokemon to pick. So open this link up. You can see it covers a lot about drafting theory and role compression, basically having the most amount of roles crammed into one Pokemon as possible so they can do a little bit of everything depending on their weeks. For the draft board evaluation, it'll tell you what to do, scan for steals, like Pokemon that are really good, that are cheaper than they should have been. There are actually a few that we noticed in there after we finished scoring that you guys might be able to find yourself too. In here, beside that, it's always telling you to consistently check for potential future picks. Basically, since you know you'll be 8th pick in the seed, you want to pick for your 8th slot and what's coming up afterwards, essentially. Because sometimes you might be close, sometimes maybe far away, because it's going to be in a snake draft, basically going forward to back and back to forward. Then it covers substitutions. About, hey, if your Pokemon gets picked, you should always have backups for that specific pick. And this goes over the different types of substitutions, which I won't do here, which are nice to read. And so this is great. Tiering Doctrine is still nice to read. Not as essential if you're not actively scoring, but still a nice thing to read too. And then obviously we're doing an 8-player format, so this is the important one for you to understand. So with that one done, then we go into the ADV draft for new players. This one's great. I love it. While the other two made by Small God are a general overview of all drafts regardless of their generation, this one is specifically about Gen 3, which is the closest thing to the format we're playing. We're playing ADV 200, which isn't essentially Gen 3. Gen 3 encompasses all Pokemon attainable in Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald, Fire Red, and Leaf Green, and all the different moves and items also available in all those games. While on the other hand, ADV 200 only focuses on those things that are accessible in Ruby and Sapphire. So, this is a great guide though. Even with a lot of Pokemon inaccessible, it gives you the closest thing you need to know for what you actually want for a draft. This website's also amazing. We'll be seeing more of this website later on too. It gives you examples of what good first picks to game for. As you can see, a lot of these Pokemon don't exist in ours. Ours really is only Metagross. But it also shows people like Salamence and Starmie and Skarmory, other Pokemon that also exist in our league. It also tells you what if you want something else, then what your plan should be for the second and third round, as well for your fourth round. My best thing on here that I really like is the checklist, showing Pokemon and roles you want to get based on priority order. How good a Pokemon is or how good a role is should be a top role for you to get. One of the things you see here is like resistances to any of the following types. You want Pokemon that can resist these types: Rock, Steel, Normal, and Fighting, considering they're very common here. You want a ground immunity because grounds like to mess up steel types. You want a good special wall. You want a Pokemon with a priority move. All of this. Middle priority, they'll show things like Rapid Spin users, Heal Bell users to get rid of status. And then low priority is just a setup sweeper or a few other different pieces of options in there. I love this guide. It's really good for you to get an idea for how you want to build your team. These next two were actually made by me. So while these ones aren't guides per se about how to draft, these ones give you good ideas of how the rules and how the actual draft is going to look like for us. These were for our previous season of Generation 2 of our Vermillion League, but they're great references to look at regardless. Our Generation 2 Draft League rules show you how I typically format the rules for you to know. They're broken up into categories, following the tournaments, telling you like a broad overview for how the rules will play, about the tournament structure and matchups. Draft rules affect how we do our draft picks, how the procedure for it is. Battle rules are just talking about how our battles work and what are the specific bans and clauses and rules to know for it. And then since we have trading, it's important to know how the tradings work. That's how our rule sheet is going to do and look like when we actually update it to our Generation 3 log. And then finally, on our draft guides, you'll also find the GSC Vermillion League Pokedraft. Same thing, this is what we used last season as well. This is essentially a giant document showing how we track our data, how you guys get to see everything on here. You can see we track how every team did based off last season. I can see Dro actually ended up winning. And you can see over here is a lineup of how everyone's done, how many games they've played, how many matches they've won, how many matches they've lost. It also keeps track of their differential, how well you've been winning and how bad you've been losing. Differential is measured by how many Pokemon you have at the end of a battle. If you win a battle and you have 3 Pokemon, you get a +3. If you lose a battle and your opponent has 3 Pokemon, you get a -3 for that battle. That's how it's tracked. Then we also keep track of how good each Pokemon's been doing as well. Jolteon was a killer in Generation 2, and you can see that measured here with 25 different kills and only 6 different deaths inside of here. It's really fascinating. This is just the same as the Poke MVP, just larger. Then you can see the player teams, how many Pokemon they have, what each Pokemon cost. It's a nice one, especially as we're drafting in real time. This is also going to be the draft board. Something similar to this will exist for our Generation 3, showing you which Pokemon are still available and which one no longer are, although we will be doing some modifications for the Gen 3 version. Trades. Whenever you get a trade, they'll just be inputted inside of here. Matchups as they happen, the results will also be posted inside of the Matchups tab. This one's great, I love this one. This one keeps track of all your different stats as a player and as a team. It shows you how many matches you've won, how many matches you've lost, your differential by how many points you lost, how many battles you won, because those are different from matches. A battle is only a part of a match. It's typically a best 2 out of 3 battles equal a match, hence why you'll see those be different numbers in here. It also shows you how well a player has been doing, how many battles they've been winning in a row. You can see New Bark Boners. He has a 7 win streak for his games, and he's never won 2 games in a row, essentially. Well, he's won 5 games in a row. He won 5 matches in a row, winning in just 2 battles, which is incredible. I love this spreadsheet. It keeps a lot of cool things. You don't need to worry about actively seeing it unless you just like to see data. This is something me or some of the other managers of the forum will actually fill out. Same with our team record and our Pokemon performance. Beyond that, that's what we have for draft guides. As we move on from draft guides, we also go into the ADV 200 overview. This page is probably the most important for everyone here to look at. As you guys can see, this covers everything you guys needed to know about Generation 3, specifically about ADV 200. Each link shows you different resources for you to know. Starting at the most beginner-friendly one, it's going to be the 200 metagame link at the top. As you click on here, it'll explain to you what ADV 200 is. It'll give you the broad overview about what Pokemon exist, what Pokemon are gone, what's typically banned inside of here, and what do you have at your disposal. It also shows you some cool different movesets for each of the Pokemon in here. Moving on from the 200 metagame though, there's other links that provide more information to you. I'm personally big fan of the one labeled Other Tiers. As you guys see, this is a giant discussion thread that people made over time detailing how they feel about certain Pokemon. You can see some basic ideas about the OU scene, which Pokemon are good in OU, which Pokemon are good in UU. For those who don't know, OU is seen as higher quality Pokemon, while UU is seen as a step below, but still quite usable. Beyond here, if you scroll down, there's a lot of different things they cover. My favorite ones were made by Seldenami, actually. Specifically, he makes analyses about every single part of the metagame. You can see this one is about the lead Pokemon, which ones are really good, which ones are anti-leads that deal with these popular leads. Beyond that, there's one for the water types in Generation 3 because they're incredibly common. You can see a full list right here, what deals with them. This one covers the important spikers, and the list goes on. You can see the Seldenami actually put a lot of work in all of these, and they're really good for you to read because it gives you really good ideas for what type of teams and what type of synergies you want to build. Moving on from that one, we also have the RS200 legal moves. Another one of my favorites. This one's not a discussion thread, rather this is a spreadsheet, just like some of the other things we looked at. This one's amazing. I don't want to look at Metagross specifically, I want to go back to the beginning. Each tab gives different information. The first tab you'll see on here will give you a broad overview of what's allowed and what is not allowed inside of Generation 3 ADV. Tab 2 shows you all the available usable Pokemon. There's a lot more Pokemon inside of here that aren't just listed because they're typically first stages or not really viable. These are all the good ones that you can actually end up using on your team. So it's really good to see which types are there abundance in, waters, and which types are quite rare, ghosts. Next is the role compendium. The role compendium is amazing. It shows you what role each Pokemon can fill depending on what you're looking for. If you need a physical attacker, you want to look inside of here. If you need a special attacker, you want to look inside of here. If you want someone who can Dragon Dance, you look here. If you want a baton passer to spread stat boost, you look over here. It's basically just Ninjask. Or if you want to use these guys too. There's speed tiers. Then if you got on the defensive side, it'll cover all the different defensive roles you might want. If you want a block spin, if you want a special wall, if you want a physical wall. It's really important to look at this, especially mons where there's especially categories where there's less mons in. Heal Battle and Robot Therapy only have 4 Pokemon that can actually even have that. So if you want something to get rid of status, you want to pick these guys up sooner rather than later, since there's so few of them. Physical walls you can take your time on, because there's a bit more of them. You don't have to worry about all of them being taken immediately, in case there's other mons you think are more important to grab. This is a great chart. Then, going on, they also do one for each of the different viable Pokemon inside of here, whether they're viable, or moderate, or usable, you'll find them inside. You can see all the different illegal moves they list inside of here, what illegal move combos they cannot use. So while Absol does get Curse and Baton Pass, it can't use both. And then also give you notable traits about what they do, what they don't do on that amount there. It's a really nice thing to read inside. Originally, you can see I actually posted on here how this page was mildly outdated. And as soon as I said that, I also discovered an updated version of this exact same page. It covers literally the exact same things, except it's better updated compared to the last one we just saw. It has the same available Pokemon by typing, but now it also has a rare move availability. There's certain moves you want, look inside of here and you can grab it. Moving on. If you don't want just broad ideas for each of the different Pokemons, you can get really into the weeds by going to ADV 200 Set Compendium. I love this. This is an incredibly in-depth guide showing you stats and information about every single Pokemon, what move pools they recommend, different bits of information for you to know, things of the such. In the beginning, they give you an intro letting you know about the important banned items. Slackberry is also the biggest hit in this one, as well as widely inaccessible moves that are common in other metagames. So there's a lot less of these moves because they were tied to a lot of Emerald or XD or Fire Red, Leaf Green movesets. This is awesome. I really am a big fan of this. Dusclops, you can see right over here. It'll let you know what moves are notable that are illegal. It'll let you know what Dusclops is great for. Dusclops is a very comfortable Pokemon inside of here with no competition for the Ghost slot. And it also shows you what type of EVs it'll run, what type of moves it'll often run, and a giant description of what you want to do with Dusclops, alongside every other Pokemon inside of here. This is a really big list. It's by no means exhaustive because it doesn't cover every single Pokemon, but it covers a lot of the heavy hitters and the big stars in Generation 3 ADV. I love this sheet. And then finally, useful tools. There's just two in here that I want to talk. I want to talk about the ADV team prep as well as the direct Pokemon comparison. We will do the ADV 200 team prep first, just because of how useful this is. This one specifically is not used for learning about things, but rather for tracking things. As you can see here, it's all blank, all through here. But you'll notice there's a format tab to change it based off what generation we're playing. We're playing ADV, so keep it on that. And you gotta write down what Pokemon you have. Let's say let's do Blaziken, Swampert, and Sceptile, the big three starters in Gen 3. I'll show you these mons, and I'll make up three others as well. We just saw Dusclops, so I'll do that. I'll do Absol, so I'll do that. And then if I'm to think of a third type, I have a Ghost, I have a Dark. Let's put a normal type in here. So let's put Girafarig. So this is a pretty great lineup, pretty good matchup here. If you want to see how the matchup looks from us, click the matchup tab, and it'll show you it. First off, it'll show you your typings, what your speed stat is, as well as your actual abilities. It'll do that for the opponent as well. You actually get to see how things line up inside of here. What's really nice, you also get to see how your actual type matchups are inside of here, what moves you're weak to, what moves you resist. As a fire fighting type, Blaziken takes no damage from bug type moves, while Sceptile takes 2 times damage from bug type moves. That's really nice to look at. It also keeps track of your stab as well. As you can see here, since I have Fighting Stab, it's going to be available on here. Since I have Fire Stab, it'll be available on here. We have Grass Stab, we have Ground Stab, we have Water Stab, because that's what these types are over here. It's super important. I love this whole sheet. And so, beyond that, we also have our opponent's team. As we look here, you can see the exact same thing represented here. These two are weak to bug-type moves, while this one resists bug-type moves and only take 0.5 damage, while this one takes ×2 and ×2 respectively. And you can see all the different weaknesses and all the different stabs they have over here as well, which is awesome. You can also see speed tiers, in case you want to know. 120, 80, 60 like before, except it'll show you what your speed will be if you invest your EVs into it. As you can see, with a 252 EV investment, your speed goes from 276 to 339, or 196 to 259. That's really important to think about as you're going against your opponents inside these weeks, because you don't know what speed they're gonna want to hit. You can see, just like before, Dusclops, even with max speed investment, is only really gonna outspeed a no speed investment Swampert, which most of the times, Dusclops does not go max speed. Team building. This one's absent. There's not a lot of information in here. This, however, is amazing if you are actively drafting. If it is draft day and we are picking our Pokemon, having this sheet is a godsend. The reason for that is you can see which Pokemon you're drafting. Let's say I'm going to pick a 20-pointer, an 18-pointer, and 17-pointer. Let's do Salamence. Let's do Starmie. And let's do Gyarados. What I'll do is I'll go over here. I'll type in Salamence. I'll type in Starmie. And I'll type in Gyarados. You can fill in the cost if you want to personally, just so it keeps track of your own money. So 17, 18, and 20. Also remember, this is a 100-point draft, not 110, so make sure that's adjusted to be as is. About 45 points left. These are my 3 months. Same thing our previous thing will do. It'll show you the Pokemon down here, their typing, and instead of just their speed, it'll show you also every single stat they have. So you can see their HP, their attack, their defense, all of that. It's awesome. Over here, there's a little note tab, so you can just write notes as you're drafting if you want to keep track of things. It'll show you, just like before, what type of strengths you have. As you can see, these guys resist bug. They only take half damage while Starmie takes 2. This is really useful for you to look at and see what are you missing on the type chart. You can see actually a big thing I have here is Rock and Electric are terrible for me. I have no Pokemon that resists electric moves. Starmie takes 2 times damage while Gyarados takes 4 times damage. And I also have a Pokemon that takes... I have 2 Pokemon that takes 2 times damage from rock type moves. So I want to find a Pokemon that can shore up those weaknesses. Maybe I want like a ground type for that example. Maybe someone like Rhydon might be a great example. Let's do Rhydon. And now I don't have electric weakness, and I don't have a rock weakness. It's something that I can use to switch in. And if we scroll over here, you can see the notable moves each of these Pokemon get. Starmie is going to have Rapid Spin. All these Pokemon can heal or get rid of status with Refresh, Recover, and Wish. There's Thunder Wave options for these mons. There's Roar if you want to switch a Pokemon out, or Taunt if you don't want them to use their moves. How to help out with screens, and Speed Control. Mind you, this won't be truly 100% accurate, just because of the fact that between ADV 200 and Generation 3, there's a lot of moves you lose as you play ADV 200. This one's showing Generation 3, so there's some extra moves in here that may not actually be the case, but it still gives you a good idea for you to know what moves your mons actually have. And you can always look it up mid-draft anyway for you to figure out if they truly have that move or not. This is the exact same page, except for during your actual matchups. You get to see what moves you have and what moves they have for any ideas what they could be doing if you don't do full research. This is a great sheet. The only problem you'll notice on here, I think I made it so you can only view it and you can't write it inside of here. I don't want you to edit my own page in case I have my own information on here. But everyone should have their own sheet. So if you ever want to make your own sheet, just hit make a copy. No one can see any information you put in there. You can put in all the information you need. I can't recommend this enough, truly. So that's the ADV 200 resources, as well as direct Pokemon comparison. I love this. This is great. I found this out during the research phase of ADV 200 draft leagues. And so this page is another one belonging to this same website. It's amazing. Essentially, what you can do is you can search up Pokemon that are available. Any Generation 3 Pokemon you can search up in here. And you can see how well they've done in drafts. How do they do this? The owner of the website, he's actually been compiling results and data from every single major Generation 3 draft and inputting it all in here so we can see how good or bad the Pokemon are. Mind you, some things are a bit different. Since this covers Generation 3 as a whole and not ADV 200, some Pokemon are typically going to be ranked lower, as there's a lot more Pokemon to use in Generation 3 compared to ADV 200, even though they exist in the same games. And so you can see the same starter core placed against Sceptile Swampert, what their base stats are, what their ADP is. What does that mean? That means what the average spot in a draft they're chosen in. If you guys are in Draft Board B, there's 8 players. So if Pokemon gets picked in the second round by the second player, they typically have an average score of about 10. You can see Swampert over here is quite frequently a round 2 pick, typically by the 6th person there. while on the other end, Sceptile doesn't get picked until round 5, and Blaziken round 4. Super cool. You can also see their draft rates. How often do these guys get drafted inside of a league? Blaziken and Sceptile get drafted about a third of the time, respectively, while Swampert's always drafted. That gives you a great idea about how good or bad a Pokemon is. You can also see their win rate inside of here, how many battles they participated in at the end of winning. And my favorite one is their Fraud and Stomper Index. This is really cool information. So let me get a drink of water here. The Fraud Index measures how good or bad a Pokemon is against a better player. So basically, what this measures is if you're fighting someone who's number 1 in the league, how well does that Pokemon typically do against the number 1 player? As you guys can see, how this works is the higher the number, the more of a fraud you are, the worse your Pokemon is against skilled players. So, Blaziken is actually the biggest fraud of this group, while Sceptile is the lowest fraud. It's actually pretty decent against highly skilled players. On the opposite end, you have the Stomper Index. This measures how good you are against newcomers, or players who haven't really played giraffes. It measures their skill level. The higher your Stomper Index, the better you are against newer players. As you see here, since these two are the negative with Swampert as well as Blaziken, these two are typically worse into newer members, just as a whole, while Sceptile actually does seem to be doing a fair bit better. Down here in the brown section, you can also see a bunch of other things they end up doing inside of here. Their KD ratio, the damage they take, the recovery, their usage rate, their lead rate. It's all super important information. Anyway, that just about covers everything. I know this was a bit of a longer video. I'm not really editing this to break things down easier. I just wanted to post this for you guys to see why I recommend everything on here. So at the end, if you're ever confused, feel free to let me know. I'm KLumino in our Discord. But to summarize everything, I genuinely do recommend checking out the RSE Pokemon rankings as well as the ADV 200 resource guide. Both of them provide a lot of information, and you should especially think about what Pokemon you want to draft for your guys' league. And also, you do have to consider your draft order. I would love Metagross or Salamence, but I am the 5th pick on my team, on my draft board, so that means I'm most likely not getting a Metagross or a Salamence, which is fine, and I'm planning around that. So with all that covered, that does wrap up this discussion video for you guys. Like I said, feel free to reach out to me, and I hope you guys have a great day. Take care.